Alright guys, so this is the second video talking about integers. In the previous video we talked about adding and subtracting. This video we're going to be talking about multiplying and dividing. And it's actually, in my opinion, multiplying and dividing is actually easier than adding and subtracting. Less mistakes actually happen. Okay, so the first thing to know is that multiplying and dividing has a very similar rule for like when you're multiplying positives and negatives together. Okay, so as an example, let's say I give you -3 times -5. Okay, remember whenever those numbers are back to back and there's no like plus signs between the parentheses or anything like that, it's a multiplication problem. So this is saying -3 times -5. Okay, now just like adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing has those similar rules. Off to the side, a positive number times a positive number is still positive. A positive number times a negative, the negative always wins. And a negative times a negative is a positive. So those rules are still the same. The only difference is with adding and subtracting, these signs had to be like right next to each other. They had to be consecutive, back to back. Okay, for multiplying and dividing, the signs don't have to be back to back like that. Sorry about my handwriting. Signs don't need to be consecutive. Okay, so looking at this question, it's -3 times -5. Remember, for multiplication, those signs do not have to be consecutive. They don't have to be next to each other. Okay, so you can see a negative number times a negative number is going to give us a positive number. Okay, so 3 times 5 gives us 15. And because two negatives multiply to a positive, our answer is just positive 15. And we're done. Okay, so keep in mind, those signs do not have to be next to each other like they do with adding and subtracting. Okay, another one. Let's say I said positive 7 times -6. Okay, well this one, I mean, whenever they don't write it, it's assumed that it's positive. So it's a +7 times a -6. So positive times a negative, well, we know that the negative is going to win. Okay, so we know it's going to be negative. And then 7 times 6 gives us 42. So our answer, -42. So the key is to be careful with those signs. When you're adding, subtracting, the signs have to be consecutive. Multiplying, dividing, they do not. Okay? Now, when we're talking about dividing, especially in this class, a lot of the times a division problem will look like a fraction because those are the exact same thing. Fractions and division are the same. Okay, so if I were to give you a question that looked like this, -60 divide by 5. Okay, first thing you gotta know is that negative is being applied to the entire fraction. If it helps you, you can think of it as giving the negative to the top, so -60 over 5. Sometimes it's better to give it to the bottom, so you can say or you can say 60 over -5. Those are all the same thing. You can give the negative to the entire fraction, you can give it to the top, or you can give it to the bottom. But what I don't want to see you guys do is this. It's not the same thing as giving the negative to both. Okay, so don't do that. That changes the question. Okay? All right, so back to this question. -60 over 5. Okay, so we have a negative divided by Or if there's nothing there, it's assumed positive. So we know our answer is going to be negative, because a negative divided by positive is negative. And then 60 divided by 5 is 12. And this class, you are allowed to use calculators, so it's going to be important that if you're using a calculator, make sure you enter it in correctly, okay? If you're using a calculator, you would enter it in as negative 60, and then the division button, and then 5, and you'll get negative 12, okay? So again, multiplying, dividing is probably easier than adding, subtracting as far as negatives go, okay? I would like you guys to try a couple questions, and then we'll be at the end of the video, okay? So I would like you guys to try the following. Okay, number 1, negative 55 divided by negative 5. And number 2, 8 times negative 3. Okay, go ahead and pause the video, do those questions on your own, and then in a few seconds you can press play and you can check your answer. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to try the questions on your own. The first one, you should have got positive 11, because negative divided by a negative is positive. And the second one, you should have got negative 24, because positive 8 times negative 3, a positive times a negative gives us a negative, and 8 times 3 is 24, so negative 24.